Hello and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. This is our first online seminar for quite a while, actually, since the middle of August. So thank you for joining us. I hope you had a great summer. I'm Lee Hopwood. I'm the CEO here at the CCMA. And today we're going to hear the latest findings from a research program that we've been running for just over a year, the evolution of the contact center. And it's thanks to our partners Puzzle that we've been able to do this program. We've been tracking how the contact center has evolved, how it's changing through the pandemic. And today we launch part 4, which we are really excited about. The report will be available for everyone through our website towards the end of today. And so please look out for that. We'll obviously be emailing you about that. But for now, I'm going to be handing over to Stephen Yap, who is our research director. He has been leading this program as well as our other research programs, and he's going to be sharing the results. He'll then be joined by Darren Homewood, the Director of Operations at Swinton, who participated in this wave of the research, and also Alan Mullen, the Customer Services Manager at Superdry, who also participated, and they'll be talking through the findings and what this means for the industry. And then just before the hour, we have invited John Allen from Puzzle, the CMO at Puzzle, to really summarize where we're at, what this means, and to really bring a nice conclusion to the next hour of conversation. So without further ado, please welcome on screen Stephen, and hopefully you're there. Fabulous. Thank you very much, Stephen. I'm going to hand it straight over to you.
Thank you so much, Lee. Good afternoon. Thank you to everybody who's dialed in to join us today for part 4 of the evolution of the contact center. What a journey it's been. We've been tracking this journey for the last 18 months, and we're now into part 4. The first part happened just at the end of last spring, when, of course, everything was still very new. We were still getting adjusted to the realities of lockdown and remote working. And we've been tracking our progress now, and we're now into the 4th stage. The last time we did this was actually 6 months ago. It was in March, and we did the interviews just as we were coming out of what I'm sure we all remember was a pretty difficult winter lockdown. It's fair to say that 6 months later, we are bouncing back. We're not yet arrived at the future, but we're certainly making strides forward, and I'd go as far as to say that we're turning a corner. So just to recap on the methodology, you may be familiar from previous ways, but this is based on qualitative research. So we interviewed a cross-section of contact center leaders. As you can see here, the brands that we've got represented. For part 4, we had a really good cross-section of different industries. We had 8 participants, 2 of which Darren and Alan are here to join us shortly after the presentation, and I'm really looking forward to chatting with them and getting a little bit further into the findings. So let me share some of the things that we're hearing in terms of where are we at in terms of evolution. But before I do that, let's make it interactive. I can see we've got 67 people on the webinar, which as a researcher makes me happy because that's a decent base size. We've got a good sample of people. So I'd just like to start by asking you some questions, if I may. So the first one I'd like to ask to all of you is, have you finalized your plans regarding office and remote working? Please take your votes now, and hopefully everybody can vote. Everybody can see this. Have you finalized your plans regarding remote and office working? The second question is, are absences increasing, decreasing, or the same compared with 6 months ago? So compared with the springtime, how are you looking in terms of absences in your teams? Increasing, decreasing, or the same? Question 3, is attrition increasing, decreasing, or the same, again compared to 6 months ago? So the votes are coming in. I don't think you can see the results, but I can see the results. I can see the results are coming in. Okay, lots of votes. Are you finalizing your plans regarding office or remote working? We've got the vote actually split between yes and no, but expect to soon. Are absences increasing, decreasing, or staying the same compared to 6 months ago? So slight in favor of increasing. Relatively few people are saying decreasing absences, and quite a few of us, 38% of us, are saying absences are remaining the same. Is attrition increasing, decreasing? 54% of us are saying attrition is increasing. That's interesting. Relatively few people, only 10% of people say attrition is decreasing, and 35% say it's the same. Thank you so much for participating. So I'm just going to recap on the results. So 44% of us say that our plans have been finalized for hybrid working. Another 43% of us say that we haven't finalized yet, but we plan to soon. 47% of us are saying absences are on the up. Only 14% say that absences are decreasing, and 53%, so the majority of us, are seeing more attrition today than we did 6 months ago. So here are the results for everyone to see, as I've just mentioned. So most of us have either finalized our plans or expect to finalize our plans soon for hybrid working. The majority of us, more of us, are saying that absences are increasing than decreasing, and more of us are saying that attrition is increasing compared to those who see attrition flat or even decreasing. Thank you so much for participating in the poll. That really sets the scene for some of the things that I'd like to share with you throughout the presentation based on the interviews that we've done with our 8 call center leaders. And the first piece is around remote working. We've now had 18 months of experience with remote working, and I think it's fair to say the jury's still out. So in the poll we just did, 45% of us said we have finalized our plans for hybrid or our permanent operating model, but another 43% of us say that we haven't, and another, but we're working on it, and another 10% say we haven't, and I don't know when we will. So a lot of us are still testing and learning, and that was definitely the finding from the conversations. The first thing to mention is that it's not a one-size-fits-all situation. Different organizations are having different experiences with remote working. Some are doing incredibly well. Some are coping well. They're not seeing any productivity losses, or at least the gains in productivity from people being able to remote work outweigh any losses in productivity through people not being in the office. On the other hand, a number of operations are seeing consistent productivity losses and are starting to look at that, and they're seeing remote staff in particular experiencing some productivity declines, which is begging the question, do we need to bring people back to the office? There isn't a universal right answer. The only answer can be made at the individual operation level, taking into consideration your specific requirements and the characteristics of your specific teams. What I am seeing, though, is that most contact centers haven't yet finalized their operating model. There's still a lot of experimentation going along. There's still a lot of testing and learning. Do we want people back 2 days in the office? Do we want people back 3 days in the office? How do we organize our teams so that we make the most of the time when people are on premises? How do we make sure that teams are coming back together so that team members can be together at the same time? There's a lot of detail, there's a lot of complexity still to work through. And one quote that you see on the right hand from one of the people that we talked to, I think it really summarizes it quite well. They call it purposeful presence. What is the purpose for you to be in the office or to be in a specific location? So do you give complete freedom of choice to your teams to decide whether or not they come in, or do you actually give flexibility, but ensure that there is a certain purpose so that when they are there for a reason, and they are there with people that share that purpose? From a customer perspective, from the demand perspective, something we saw during the lockdowns was that customer anxiety. The need for customers to be reassured was much stronger than ever before, and of course that has had and continues to have a direct impact on customer demand. As the world outside continues to be somewhat uncertain, we have moved on considerably from 6 months ago. Whether you're in England, Scotland, or Wales, restrictions have eased significantly compared with 6 months ago, but there's still a lot of widespread uncertainty. We're going to be coming out of furlough fairly soon. Travel is still relatively uncertain, and the travel sector in particular have been really feeling the effects of that uncertainty in terms of incoming customer demand and the sorts of questions that they're getting. So that anxiety, that need for reassurance hasn't abated, and maybe it won't, because the wider world continues to be uncertain, and it is likely to continue to be uncertain for the foreseeable future. The trend that we've seen for higher average handling times continues in the main. It's really, really important, more so than ever, that colleagues are prepared for that level of reassurance that customers expect, for the level of difficult calls and at the extreme, sadly, we are continuing to see an increase in abusive customer interactions. And that is likely, I think, to be the norm for a good while. I think the quote on the right summarizes it really well. People need that reassurance. And even if people can find information on a self-serve, people need that reassurance by getting the same information from a human to make them feel really comfortable that they've got all the information that they need. I think it's fair to say that in the wider world, it's probably harder than ever before to actually get facts, to get the right information. We're operating in an environment where fake news and fake information is everywhere, and therefore feeling sure and feeling reassured that you have the right information is something that we're seeing, and it's affecting us in the contact center. And it's part of the role that we play in the contact center, to be the provider of good information, to be the provider of facts. The impact on our people, of course, continues, and consequently there is, I'm really glad to say, very much an ongoing focus on our people's mental health, on our people's welfare, on our people's well-being, and on regular communication. So it is very much now commonplace within contact centers to have planned downtime. We've all have 18 months of experience. We all know what it's like to remote work. We all know how difficult it is when every minute of every day is scheduled down to the last very detail. So those spontaneous moments, those spontaneous downtime moments that you might have in an office don't exist necessarily in the same way remotely. So it's so important that you actually plan those opportunities for people just to down tools and take a break. So a blackout hour, for example, that Alan at Superdry initiates, just having an hour a week where people don't have to take calls. Home visits, one of our participants in the research talked about how actually they go and visit advisors. They go and knock on doors and talk to advisors working from home. Ramping up training and focusing on those soft skills, focusing on well-being, focusing on empathy for colleagues, empathy for customers, leaders' empathy for staff members, and resilience. These are topics that have now become very much part of the core fabric of our training. And rightly so, because I think everything that the pandemic has wrought upon us, one of the positive side effects has been, both within contact centers and within our larger social fabric, a stronger emphasis on our mental health, on our well-being. And I hope that continues as a permanent fixture. I hope that we continue to break down the barriers and the stigmas around asking for help, around talking about your mental health, around saying that it's okay to not be okay. And it's great to see contact centers continue to prioritize this. So thinking about channel demand and thinking about customer demand and thinking about protecting our people, channel management came through as one of the top topics emerging for the last 18 months, and it's still absolutely top of the agenda. How do we make sure that the right query and the right customer is going to the right channel and the right advisor? We're now starting to see those investments that have been put in during the pandemic starting to pay off in terms of intelligent demand management. It does take time. You can't expect to ramp up self-serve and digital channels and immediately expect a dip in your phone demand. For a while, you've got to manage multiple channels, but if you're able to invest and get your self-serve channels, get your digital channels working well and deliver the right customer experiences, then you should be able to see over time that those assisted channels will the demand will start to tail off as that demand goes to those alternative channels. We're seeing live text chat absolutely come to the fore. Live text chat is growing much faster than any other channel. Live text chat is actually taking a lot of the email demand away. So there is some substitution going on, that a lot of where organizations have implemented text chat, it's actually directly impacted and reduced email demand. Some organizations that have a physical retail estate have been able to actually operate a hybrid model where during the pandemic, when stores were shut, retail staff came into the contact center. Now, of course, the stores have reopened, and actually the skills and the knowledge they gained, those retail staff gained during the contact center, have served them really well. Now that they're back in retail, because they are more able to handle queries. So if you have retail store staff, chances are some of your demand actually comes from the stores, and that demand has probably reduced now that those store staff have spent time in the contact center. But it also allows for actually flexible resourcing, because I've heard from a number of organizations where retail staff can come in and step in to help with those peak loads in the contact center where required, but also where contact center people can come into the stores where required to help out in stores. So that's an interesting new thing which has emerged. I think that's quite new, to think about the crossover between retail and contact center teams. So ultimately, it is about matching the right customer and the right query to the correct channel. And when you do that correctly, you can see customers being more satisfied, and you can protect your people, and you can protect demand, and you can increase your overall capacity without increasing your overall resource footprint. So the quote you can see on the screen is actually from Alan at Superdry, and Superdry have invested significantly in their self-serve capabilities in their online health center, and have promoted live chat. And we can see that actually the implications of that, the demand for chat is increasing and the demand for phone is decreasing. Of course, I don't think this is news to anybody, but in the UK, we are currently operating under an extraordinary talent shortage. In the last period recorded by the Office of National Statistics, which was May through July, there were 953,000 job vacancies. That's a record high. It's higher than at any point since the ONS has been tracking this. So we had a period in previous waves of the evolution of the contact center. We talked about low attrition. During the pandemic, people didn't want to move jobs. That period is well and truly over. As the polling at the start of this session showed, the majority of us are experiencing higher attrition than we did earlier in the year. So people are starting to look, and people are starting to move. One of the themes that is coming through now is, should we actually think about recruiting outside of our traditional catchment area? Does remote working give us the opportunity to do that? The answer is yes, but a conditional yes. Some contact centers have started to do this. They have started to recruit 100% remote workers, but it doesn't necessarily work for everybody, for every contact center. And there are some important considerations if you are thinking of recruiting 100% remote workers, people who actually don't visit the office. How do you do your onboarding? How do you do your training? We all know how difficult it can be to train remotely. We've all got experiences, I believe, of trying to train remotely and realizing it doesn't work very well, and actually training really should happen in the office. So it only really works if you've got a very robust remote onboarding process. What happens with your tech support? What happens with your kit? Many of us have people who have kit and actually need to come into the office to get upgrades or to get technical support or to get their kit fixed. What happens if you've got somebody who doesn't have that ability to go to the office? How do you manage that? So the opportunity is there, but there's work to be done to figure out how we solve all of those problems for our 100% remote workers before we can fully embrace that sort of recruitment from a wider geographical area. But we may have to, because the reality is we're now competing in an incredibly tight talent market. Other ways that we can consider competing are the flexible hours. We can offer potentially more flexible hours than other jobs. We can accommodate people who need to do the school runs in the morning and the evening. We know how to do split shifts now to allow people to do shorter splits or shorter shifts, or to do shifts at unusual hours. We are, because of all the experience that we've gained through remote working, we are able to offer remote working. If we can solve those onboarding and technology issues, we are able to offer remote working. If you're a driver, you can't work remotely. If you work for a contact center, you may potentially be able to work in that way. And the final observation, bringing it sort of back up to the strategic level and continuing a theme that we've been talking about throughout this journey in the evolution of the contact center is the ongoing convergence of customer service with customer experience and the ongoing increase in profile that contact centers are now experiencing and enjoying within organizations. It's fair to say, I believe contact centers have never had a higher profile than they have now. And as different parts of the organization, as other departments start to really understand what we do and start to appreciate what we do, there's growing integration of what we do in other functions. I'm talking about marketing functions. I'm talking about product functions. Of course, what happens in marketing and what happens in products has a direct impact on what the demand that comes in. Changes in our marketing, new campaigns, changes in product have a direct impact on the customer and therefore the contact center. And it also the other way, marketing and product teams and UX teams are increasingly involving our staff, our colleagues, our frontline, and recognizing that no one knows more about the customer than the people that talk to the customers every day. So strategic discussions around improving product, around marketing activation, increasingly customer service personnel and contact center colleagues are being brought in to those discussions and having a seat at that table as that recognition grows. And this is, this is a nice quote from Darren, who will be featured shortly. Customer experience is a whole package of which the contact center is a part. We absolutely have a seat at that table alongside our colleagues in marketing, alongside our colleagues in product and R&D. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. I just want to finish with a recap of what I think are the 4 priorities to the end of this year and looking into 2022. We'll continue to test and learn the hybrid operating model. There is, of course, still a certain amount of uncertainty around what the future brings. There is some speculation about lockdowns. Who knows what's going to happen in the winter? And so not surprisingly, many of us are still waiting and seeing, but we're using that time to experiment, to try different things and see what works. Of course, for many of us, the Christmas peak is a huge focus of attention. And in such a tight market, in such a tight employment market, resourcing is a major consideration. So that has implications on recruitment, it has implications on attrition, retention, and it puts the spotlight on how we manage our channels in order to intelligently manage that peak demand load. So investing in channel strategy, investing in those self-serve capabilities has never been more important than ever, particularly as it's harder than ever simply to recruit new people. And at the same time, we've got this strategic shift happening. A few years ago, we deliberately changed our language, our vernacular, going from agents to advisors. And I think we're at the cusp of potentially changing our vernacular again, where actually we're starting to think about our advisors more as consultants. We're starting to think about the job of the contact center, not just as answering questions, but actually proactively advising customers, helping our customers make decisions, helping our customers get more value out of their relationships with our organizations. And we're seeing the recognition of the role of our advisors in being more consultative grow across the organizations in which we operate. And we're seeing our advisors operate across more customer journeys than ever before. Thank you very much for being joining me on that presentation and the participation in the polls. I'd like now to invite Darren and Alan to come on screen and come off mute and join me for the Q&A. Please as well, if you've got any Q&As as questions of yourself, please make use of the Q&A button. You can see it at the bottom of your screens if you're using a desktop. Just type in any questions that you might have for Alan and Darren and myself, and we'll try to get to them before the end of the session. So Alan and Darren, thank you so much for being a part of this today, and of course being a part of the earlier research. I want to kick off with this point about demand management and channel strategy. We talked, I remember when we talked in our earlier discussions, you shared some really good case studies of how you've done that, and what you've been doing around steering queries to the right channels, protecting colleagues during this period. I'd love if you could share with our audience, some of those case studies and some more details of what you did around steering customers and the right queries to the right channels. Maybe Alan, I can invite you in the first instance to talk about what you've been doing at Superdry.
Yeah, no worries, and thanks for inviting me along today. Um, I think the first thing I would say about it is I've not met anyone that's nailed it yet. I think we're all still learning, but I think we've definitely made good progress in the last 18 months at Superdry. And I joined Superdry a few months before the pandemic, and when I joined, the contact was predominantly phone and email, and which we all know are sort of resource heavy, and we probably weren't making use of the other channels that we had. And it meant then when things went wrong or we had spikes, all hands were on deck. I think, like most businesses, what we wanted to do was deliver this change over a long period of time. But then the pandemic came along, and we were forced to deliver probably what was a year's worth of work in the space of a few weeks or even a few months. I think it was our hand was forced to start taking things forward quickly. I think the positive thing for us is we had AI technology sitting in the background. So when I joined Superdry, we had quite a lot of technology, but we weren't necessarily utilising it to full effect. And I think a lot of businesses are like that. You know, they've invested in technology, but I think what we were using it for was to deflect contact. So we were trying to stop phone calls coming in. We're trying to stop emails coming in. And actually, if you're making good use of your AI technology, you should be using it for channel management and trying to direct customers to the right place. Because if you just try and deflect customers, you'll create frustration. So we went on that journey really to start moving people over to, so for the low hanging fruit, like where is my order or how do I return an item? How can we make that AI led? And that meant that the more complex queries could be sent into the contact center. So we started working more closely with our AI provider and focusing on really nailing our help center so that when customers go online, they found it easy to use. And it wasn't before. It was really difficult, it was really clunky to navigate. And that's a continuing piece of work, looking at where we're delivering successful answers, customers rate the experience, and we continually improve it. And I think that's really given us a much more control over how we manage customer demands, and we can change it. So we now manage how customers escalate, and if things ramp up, we can change it, we can adapt it. Whereas before, things just got busy and everyone just jumped on. It was all hands on deck. Now we control the customer journey rather than the customer journey controlling how we respond to it. And I think that puts us in a much stronger position, particularly during peak periods.
Fantastic, thanks, Alan. I'm interested in this idea of deflection, because it's a tight balance to try to achieve, isn't it, between actively steering customers and avoiding the customer perception that you're deflecting them and not giving them the channel that they want to use. What have been some of your learnings and how do you manage that transition so that it doesn't come across like deflection, it comes across as something that's customer centric?
I think at first we very much focused on deflection, being honest, because we had all this demand. Our stores closed. We were the only people available for customers to speak to. So it was about how do we stop all these emails and phone calls coming in for the easier inquiries. And so initially it started out as deflection, but actually we worked out that looking at customer feedback, that wasn't a positive experience for customers. And so if you visit our help centre, if you're not getting the answer you're looking for, we make it easier for customers to escalate. So our contact per order has actually gone up. So it has gone up, I would say, I think we were around 8 or 9%. It's gone up to over 10% now. But we're giving customers what they want. And actually, that's what we're here for. So we're not just here to deflect contact. We're here for when things go wrong to put them right. So it's about making it easy to get that answer. But if you can't get your answer, then making sure you can find the right person to help you with it and doing it down the right channel.
That's interesting. So actually that you've gone up 1 or 2 percentage points in terms of contact per order, but that's good contact, that's engagement, that's actually customers who are positively engaged with the Superdry brand. Have you managed to do that with the same number of colleagues, or have you had to ramp up the number of colleagues?
Yeah, we've done it with the same number of colleagues. So it's because of the type of contact that we're driving. Again, we're getting smarter with how we use it. If you're using your AI well, and also everything that works behind the scenes, you know, we've got the answers ready. So if the technology is good, you've got everything in your back pocket ready to answer the customer, so you can deal with those queries quickly. So and the positive thing for us, I think I said it to you before, but we took a phone number off of our help center site because we wanted to try and see what it was like, and our calls have gone down by 85% versus last year. With and chat being one of our main contact channels now, but our CSAT is the exact same, if not better. So it's been a really positive move, and we don't get that feedback about not being available on the phone calls.
That's really inspiring, Alan. Thank you for sharing. Darren, the same question to you. At Swinton, what have you been doing to steer the customers and the queries to the right channels?
Yeah, so probably slightly different to Alan in our customer base. We've got a lot of old legacy customers. A lot of our customers will be over 50, so they probably enjoy that channel of phoning us a lot more than using the web. So when the pandemic first hit us, we obviously had a real dilemma. We were pushing people at home. People couldn't come into work. We had to turn off some of our channels, and we certainly reduced our opening hours. So interestingly, we were open till 8:30 in the evenings. We're now open till 6. We reduced that, but we're not going back because we've managed to give that access to people through the web, through self-serve, and we've not had any detriment in terms of satisfaction. So our NPS scores, the satisfaction scores have stayed the same. So we're certainly not looking to move that back. And of course, our people working from home, we didn't want them if they're on their dining room table because they've got no other facilities. We didn't want them sitting at the dining room table at that time of night, still taking calls. So we've done a lot around positioning with the customers when they do call. Initially, we had some triage to help guide people onto the internet, educate that there was a service there, that they could use it. We have signposted it through letters, through our IVR, etc. And the point you was making earlier about how our guys have been engaged in the whole process of improving that experience has been fundamental, because we've got a pilot team, a model office team that we set up, and they look for the problems that people have when they're online. So they're our eyes and ears for the customer. So when a customer has rung in that's been online, why did they fail to transact online? What was the problems and issues? So a gathering of all of that information, all the problems that the customers have, and resolving those problems have been a real focus for us.
That's interesting. So I guess that's what consultants like me call root cause analysis, and trying to get to the root causes.
Yeah.
So is that part of that problem solving group that you talked about, Darren? Is that a sort of a cross function team within Swinton? What's your relationship to them?
So in fact, Stephen, what we're doing is rolling out a program of continuous improvement and trying to improve that culture across every single person that take frontline calls. So that's going right across the operation. We want to try and create an army of problem solvers to ensure that we've got that at least the start of that process of what are the problems, what are the issues that our customers are having, rather than just our people there to transact with the customer and solve a problem, but try and understand what those problems are and why they're occurring. So that's to everyone. But we've got a specific team that is cross-functional. There's a team that sits in the contact centre that takes calls and will log additional information for us. But they're also helping our colleagues in marketing and pricing and all over the business will be firing questions into them. So what's customers' reaction to the launch of this, or what's the customer's reaction and issues when they're going through this process? And they'll be there asking additional questions to the customers when those type of calls come through. So it works two ways. We're escalating issues as we're finding them, but we're also the rest of the business is able to interact with this model office team to really fire specific questions in as to why our customers how our customers are reacting to things.
That's a really good example of the growing integration that I'm seeing a lot of, where the contact center is more and more involved in those sort of big strategic conversations. How do we fix problems? How do we solve things? How do we make the customer experience better? We're getting quite a few questions in from the audience. Thank you so much, everybody, and keep the questions coming. We've got a bit of time. I'm going to try to get to most, if not all, of the questions. We've got a question. It's actually a similar question coming in from Ross and from Terence. So thank you, Ross and Terence. Ross and Terence are asking how do we effectively embed and maintain a strong corporate culture in a hybrid or remote working environment? This is something that we've talked about in earlier iterations of the evolution of the contact center. When everyone's working at home, on their desks, one job starts to feel like another job, which then may have an impact on how you feel about your employer and may encourage you to look elsewhere. How do you maintain culture, and how do you keep people engaged when people are remote? Darren, I'll start with you if you have any thoughts on that.
I've got the same question myself. So this is something that really is top of our list at the moment. We've got a couple of things that we're concerned about, is maintaining that culture, but also how do you stop people just job hopping if they're working from home and they can remotely work. So why are they wedded to our organisation as to others? It is a difficult one. We're at the stage now where we're looking to rotate our people. So we're going to be 1 week in, 1 week out. So we're rotating them between the office and home working. And we want our people to be close to the office at the moment. Although we will consider in the future, can we go completely remote? But we want sort of hub and spokes around all of our sites across the UK. So we do want to keep them in the office for a certain amount of time, even though we are considering, more permanent home working in the future. But it is a great question. I'm not sure I have the answer to that, because we've probably not that far down the track. What we want to look at is, how do we attract people who are going to stay with our organisation and value our organisation as opposed to others. So this comes on to a little bit around recruitment, and how can we give, I think you touched on it earlier, Stephen, how can we give our people the opportunity to work for us around their lives rather than the other way around, and do some key hours for us that suits them, so that they've got that emotional attachment to our organisation, because it's good for them to work for us, because it suits them, as opposed to they like the brand or whatever else it might be.
Thank you, Darren. And Alan, the same question to you. I imagine Superdry has a pretty strong internal culture. How do you maintain that culture or keep that culture going when people are remote?
I think for us, it's been about making use of all the different sort of channels that we have to speak to people. Very early on in the pandemic, we've used Workplace, and others use Workplace, a sort of Facebook type approach. But what's really taken over for us is the messenger service that's on that. So I have it on my phone, and I must get 1,000 messages a day, which I can't read all of them, but we talk throughout the day, and it's about, we use it for support. So we've got little support groups in there. So if you need help with something specific, you can reach out. But we also have a good laugh on it. We talk about what we're having for lunch. We have gifts on there. We have fun with it. It also gives us the opportunity to share messages in the business. So at the actual workplace, we can do that locally. And I think as a business as well, we've tried to carry on what we did in the head office. So every couple of weeks, we've got a big cafeteria. We would have a town hall session where our CEO and the exec would talk to people and talk about what's going on in the business, where we're going, get the excitement. Is it the same now? It's not. It's not the same, because we're doing it on Teams, we're doing it on Workplace, but we're trying our best to keep that going. So we're going through a period of change right now, and at least every couple of weeks, we are, and certainly every week with our wider ecom team, we are on town hall sessions. Everyone has the opportunity to share their opinion. Everyone has the opportunity to get involved in things, and so we're trying to replicate what we did physically. It's not quite as good, but I feel that we're still doing as well as we can with it. There's more that we can do, but it's certainly helping us keep that corporate culture alive. Thanks,
Alan. I think coming back to one of the quotes in the presentation, this idea of purposeful presence, being in the office. And I think one of the takeouts for me is when you do plan people's time in the office, how do you maximize that time to create that sense of engagement? Because clearly that's what being in an office does. So, how do you make sure that people's time in the office is used for that purpose? We've got some more questions coming in. Again, I'm going to merge two questions if I may. I've got a great question from Dominic, which is, we'd be interested to hear your approach to managing appropriate behaviors when people are working remotely over and above your standard quality evaluations. And there's a related question for Sue, which I'd also like to bring in, which is, when it comes to hybrid working, how do you deal with underperformance when you see productivity dropping for individuals? Do you just bring them back in? Do you offer them additional support and monitoring? So appropriate behaviors, underperformance in a hybrid world. What are the ways to deal with that? Darren, if I could bring that to you.
Yeah, so we definitely brought people back into the office if they're underperforming and there's an issue. We have asked people back into the office so that we've got that extra supervision. I think it's a tough one. We've closely monitored our home working and office working performance, and in general terms, we haven't seen too much of a difference between the two. But when we do get odd individuals that are at home on a permanent basis at the moment, we will look to bring them back in before we go down that more sort of formal route. We think that's the best way to support them. In terms of working from home, we don't want that as a reason for them underperforming and having distractions or other issues. We've pushed people to work from home, so I think it's a bit unfair if they have those distractions that we then take them down a sort of formal route. So we absolutely would try and get them back into the office to support them before taking any form of action.
Thanks, Darren. And Ellen?
Yeah, I think for us, I think working in contact centres is a little bit different to other jobs, and so I think it would depend really whether the underperformance was down to working at home or whether it was a genuine underperformance, because bringing someone back in won't necessarily make them more productive or improve their behaviours, because it might be nothing to do with that. And I think that the beauty of working in a contact centre is we can see what everyone is doing. So we can see if they're available, we can see how many contacts they're taking, we can see how they're handling things, we can listen to things. So I think that's the beauty of it. If you look outside in other places where people manage their own workloads, that's more difficult to measure, and that's where, and I know that in the wider area of the business, that they would probably bring people back in. But we've successfully managed underperformance over the last 18 months without people having to come back into the office, because we have those stats and we have all those resources to look at, resources available for us to look at. So I wouldn't say for us personally as a business, we wouldn't manage it any differently. We'd manage it the exact same way if someone was in the office or outside of the office, because my managers are working from home as well. So it should be the exact same experience.
It should be the exact experience, but we know it's harder because you can't pick up on things as easily when people aren't next to you, when you haven't got the physical proximity, when you haven't got the body language, when you're trying to communicate over screens. Is there a way in which the tools that we've now got available can help us with that management piece, to avoid having to bring people in, as you say? How do we use those tools and the technology that we have available to help us in those situations?
I think we've got all the tools to monitor performance, but it's probably more so down to how the person's managed or that relationship with the manager. So if you've got someone working remotely and they're not speaking to the manager on a weekly basis, then they're likely to start developing bad behaviours or underperformance. I think it's about that interaction with your team. It's about still maintaining those team meetings. It's about making sure that one-to-ones still take place. It's about making sure that you replicate what would happen in the real office as what would happen in home. At home or hybrid working. And I think that, certainly in our experience, that there's not too much difference in terms of how we manage things. I do get that, yes, you can't see, if someone's having an off day, But again, you can pick up on these things. You can, we're talking to each other throughout the day, but through workplace, we're talking to each other. If someone's a bit quiet, we pick up on these things very, very quickly. So for me, I don't think there is that. We've not experienced too much of a difference so far, but I realise that might be different for other people.
Thanks, Alan. Great questions from Rebecca. Wants to get some thoughts on efficiency targets. We incorporated AHT into agent targets this year as it was above budget during the pandemic, but the collateral damage has been an unhappy workforce feeling the pressure. I wonder what other contact centers have done, how they've overcome that challenge. And I'm hearing, thanks Rebecca, I'm hearing that consistently as AHT is going up because customers are more anxious and are in need of reassurance. As we're becoming better at steering the simple stuff away, the more complex stuff comes in, and all of that increases AHT, which puts pressure on AHT. And is AHT still the right target? Do we need to relax our focus on AHT? Do we need to rethink how we do our efficiency targets? Darren, what do you have any thoughts on target setting and efficiency in this world of higher AHT and uncertain customers?
Yeah, I think generally the targets that we have for people are the same, in terms of in the office or out the office. I think AHT is an interesting one because I very much of the opinion that talk time will be what it will be with customers. So if talk time is going up generally, then it's going up for a reason, and that. Generally, I don't think individuals will extend a call through performance or misbehaviour sort of thing. So I think the talk time is a talk time. I would never put pressure on individuals in terms of AHT. What I would be looking for is more, what's the trend? Why is AHT going up? And what are the things in generally in the calls that are making everyone's AHT go up, and try and tackle those root causes as opposed to put individual targets down for people. And if you was to look at individuals, I'd certainly only do it from a basis of where's the outliers in a general average AHT sort of thing. So I do think that AHT is not a specific target that I would go after, certainly at an individual level, but as a group level, I think try and understand what the general AHT increases are. What's the root cause.
Thanks, Darren. Alan, I saw you nodding your head quite profusely.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that AHT, I've never been a huge fan of measuring it, if I'm honest. I know it's important, but individual level, I don't think it's. If you've got someone that takes a bit longer because they talk too long, then that can be coached, that can be improved. But I think I think keep targets as simple as possible. We focus on contacts per day, based on what that person is handling. And if they're not achieving the targets, then it's up to us to support them in terms of coaching and improving that. So I think that something like AHT, I think Dan is completely right. You look at what's happening, you take a step back, you look at what's happening and why that AHT is longer. And if it's down to the individual, you coach and help them improve. But if someone's talking longer to a customer, it's generally because they're having a good relationship and a good conversation with them. So that's not always a bad thing.
I'm really excited by how I think finally we're starting to reframe this idea of what contact is. And there's I guess certain kinds of contact we don't want, and there's certain kinds of contact that we do want. And the thing with AHT is that it doesn't distinguish between the two, why it's a very blunt instrument. And actually there's certain kinds of contact that we do want, and if we encourage that kind of contact and steer, if you like, the contact we don't want to the self-serve channels, then that's going to mean happier customers, and that's going to mean stronger brands. That's going to mean contact centers who are actually helping directly with customer engagement, and actually maybe we should be encouraging increases in AHT. So I'm really, it's really good to hear that certainly in two of you we've got two advocates of that concept.
I think Stephen. So there's another point I would make on that is if you focus too much on AHT, I generally find that you might drive the wrong behaviours and things don't get resolved first time. And I found that before, that you get a lot of repeat contact. Some of my people that take longer are my best people getting things resolved first time. So it's about the quality of the conversation rather than the time it takes.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Got a couple of questions on recruitment. So it is a seller's market at the moment. It is an incredibly tight labour market. And how are you finding it? What are you doing? What are you having to do differently? Are you revisiting your value proposition for candidates? I'll start with you, Darren, if I may.
Yeah, it is a difficult one. We've seen over the last few months that recruitment teams that we're expecting 12 people to turn up, and we've had 4 or 5 people because candidates have had 4 or 5 different offers on the table at the same time. So it's a growing concern. We've done a bit of research. We think that the market will get better September when the furlough scheme ends, and hopefully the market's a bit more buoyant. In terms of what we're doing, because we've set up a remote working capability now. We've got across our group, across the Atlanta group, we've got 12 different sites and locations. So we're in a fortunate position where we can put adverts out across all of those sites, and if we've got one site that's more buoyant than another, we can push the resource into that site. And I think you mentioned something earlier, Stephen, about sort of flexible resourcing and modelling. We've certainly done that across our business, across our product lines, because we've seen pet insurance and the leisure insurance really take off, whereas motor has dropped. So we've cross-skilled our people to be able to take different products, which gives us that flexibility of being able to recruit in different locations and remotely manage from wherever that sort of centre of excellence for that product is. And I think in the future, I've already mentioned that we're certainly keen. We're not there yet, but we're certainly keen to put some adverts out around, working that daytime shift in between school hours, making it work for the individual, and so they can work around their life rather than the other way around. So we're certainly looking for 2 groups to come in October, where we really do test that to the full.
Thank you so much, Darren. And Alan, I know Christmas is on your mind. Obviously, as a retail business, that's a very, very big deal. What are you doing at Superdry in the current climate from a recruitment perspective?
So we are we've gone hybrid, and my view on our peak recruitment this year is we're advertising it as work it your way. So we are looking to try and bring people in, and they can choose to work from home, they can choose to work from the office, or a combination of the both of the two. We are initially what we've been looking at is people within a 2-hour radius, so they can come into the office if we need to. But I am going to speak to our IT team actually this Friday about can we expand that, because I do anticipate it's going to be challenging to go out and double the size of our team over the next 6 weeks. We put our advert out this week and we've had a good response so far. We've had the same feedback as Darren, that things are going to hopefully improve over the next month or so. But I want to just make sure we've got some contingencies in place. And I always tell the story about my nephew lived in Cornwall in his 20s and worked in tourism in the summer and couldn't get jobs in the winter and didn't have any contact centres around him. So that's a market we've not tapped into. So looking at people that work in tourism in those types of towns, people that live in remote places in Scotland, for instance, as long as they've got Wi-Fi and we can get the equipment to them, they can work for us. So I think really I'm looking to try and expand into that and utilise as much of that as possible. So if people want to work for Superdry from anywhere in the country, they can. And as we've got language speakers as well, the next stage for me is looking at can we have people in Germany and the Netherlands and France working for us. And because if we're a hybrid model, we can make that work. And we've got shops in those countries, so we can offer people offices to work in there as well. So we're thinking quite big on this one, but we'll take it gradually.
Very best of luck to the both of you with what's to come, and to all of you on the call who I know are thinking about recruitment. And it's a very, very hot topic and a big challenge for all of us right now. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of your questions. That's all the time we have, I'm afraid, for our panel discussion. Thank you so much to you, Alan, to you, Darren, for sharing all of your insights today, and indeed in the report. And of course, there is a full report available. It will be uploaded to the CCMA website this afternoon. So do log on, and it's a free download for members and non-members. So feel free to log in, and you can get that report, which, if I do say myself, is a rather good read. We're not quite finished though. I want to bring back to the screen Jonathan Allen from Puzzle to share some concluding remarks. Over to you, John.
Hi, Stephen. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'll keep this short, and just to reiterate, thank you again to Alan and Darren. I think we probably could have all listened to, for at least 2 hours to that conversation. It was incredible. So what did I hear? I've noted down 4 things, and I'm going to do them in the reverse order because I think they make more sense in terms of what we're seeing as movement and change in the contact center. So the first one is around the contact center becoming center of the business. And this is something that we've seen evolve over the 4 waves that we've done with this study, that companies are beginning to see the importance, and contact center is not a reactive department that needs to be controlled through operational efficiency. It actually is the connection point with the customer. And to hear that coming out, certainly in the conversation and in the research as well, is a really great sign. I think, what we will see more of, and we'll follow it over the course of these studies as well, is that we'll see a combination or a coming together of all of the departments within organizations that have a interest in the customer. And the central point of that needs to be the contact center. And then prior to that, and it links in very well, is what was talked about, channel choice. And that channel choice, and particularly what Alan said about the movement from using additional channels, non-voice channels, to deflect customers, and understanding that actually it can be used to improve the customer experience, is going to become very relevant to it becoming more central to the business. And so, we talked a bit about how people are moving to chat, how AI, and we're certainly seeing this with our customers as well, is allowing a much better service to be given to people in those self-service channels than before. And when you start to think about being able to bring in things like video and co-browsing, it creates an environment where you can see, in the moments that kind of matter, we can automate. But the moments that really matter, we can start to bring in human empathy, and that's what we're starting to see, and what we're seeing with those channel developments. And then that links into what Stephen talked about, uncertain times, and how those uncertain times are putting pressure not only on the contact center staff, but also on the customers that are calling in. And for me, the big takeaway from that was all about empathy. And so, how can we allow great experience for the agents or the colleagues to then allow and empower those agents to create great customer experience to the customers? And that certainly is what we work very strongly with our customers on. And then finally, on the hybrid environment, and we didn't get a chance with one of the questions, but someone brought this up about the operating model. And I think we will see, certainly within the next 3 months when we do this next study, how the hybrid vision will allow to take shape when we've created the right operating model, the right environment, both at home and in the contact center, and the right technology. But also as we understand and start to see where agents can be used and where the technology can be used. So, as I said, amazing conversation. Thank you to Stephen and Alan and Darren. And just quickly hand back now, Lee, to less than 30 seconds, I think, to close up. But thanks everyone for listening, and thanks for joining.
It's all good. Thank you, John. And thank you, John, and the team at Puzzle for supporting us on this program. I love these sessions because there's so many ideas and so many thoughts, and the ability for our members to really see where they're at in comparison to other contact centers. And I know how valuable that is. And that's what we aim to do across all of the events that we're doing, is to try and give everyone a chance to see what other people are doing. So we have got a packed events agenda, by the way, between now and Christmas. So please do check out our website. But for now, thank you, John. Thank you for the team at Puzzle for supporting us. Thank you, Stephen, for taking us through that program. Huge thanks to Alan and Darren for sharing your insights today, participating in the focus groups that we held last month. So really, really appreciate your support there. And also thanks to all of those that participated in the focus groups this time around. It's so valuable and so important to get that feedback and input. And obviously going forward, we're always looking at doing focus groups and roundtables. So if you do get an invite, please do join us. We get so much good feedback around the insights and the sharing and the value of those sessions. So thanks very much for those. And if you haven't read the story so far, parts 1 to 3 of the evolution of the contact centre are available on the website. If you go onto the website, ccma.org.uk, they are there under research. So please do check them out. It is a fascinating read when you look back at the last year and what has actually happened and how the industry has evolved. It really is fascinating. So please do check those out. Part 4 will be available later on today. And of course, we will be sharing it via email over the coming weeks. So for now, thank you so much for joining us and have a fantastic afternoon. Take care. Bye-bye.